Hi, everybody. This is Heather Lockett with Lasting Conversations. And today, via Zoom, we have the vivacious and dynamic Lisa Poskanzer with us today. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Heather.
Hi, thank you for joining me. We just met a week ago and sparks flew, and we are going to have so much fun. So, in continuing the conversations about education and teachers and children and the folks that need to be seen and heard, and the other people who have boots on the ground in our communities, stateswide and worldwide, who are the helpers, the support systems for these folks doing the best that they can. So we are continuing with education with Lisa. And Lisa is the co-founder and the director of Joy at Improv to Improve LLC. And so, Lisa, I want you to describe what you do, because it really, you work with children and their administrators and teachers with pre-K through 12th grade. And it is for professional development and curriculum. You've developed curricula for these folks, and it's all about expression and being seen. And again, the support for the educators, for the people who support our kids. Take it away, Lisa. Please tell us what it is that you do and your light that is just so shiny out in the world.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much for having me, Heather. I saw you across the table and I was like, I need to know her more. And I went down the podcast rabbit hole. And thank you. I got to listen to a lot of people who I didn't know about and a lot of people I knew already, which was fun.
Well, and that was fun. And we might as well say this right now, because it turns out that you not only know Tamika Taylor, who was just on our last couple of episodes, talking about and you love Tamika, but you were one of the presenters at her recent event. So the world is intrinsically small. And this is exactly what brings me joy, is we thread together and our big earth marble, but that the work coincides, and you just never know who you're going to run into, that you know that same person.
So these are our lasting conversations, right? I had to say that because I met Tamika at an event that I was holding.
Right.
She came as a parent and an educator, and we were playing one of our games, and we had to separate the parents from the children. Which was the first time we were doing this kind of event where I realized having the parents and the children together on their first experience playing was not a great idea. Anyway, so I meet Tamika and I'm working with just the parents, and she does something and I coach in the way we teach teachers to coach in. Right. And she stopped me and said, and was like, thank you, because I'm always so hard on myself.
And that came up in our episode of where we can still be that person that's hard on ourselves.
So that when you said, would you be on the podcast and come talk about what you do? Right. At the core of what I do is help the educators teach the children how to have the lasting conversation of their life with themselves, how to self-identify, how to know who you are in the world. And the only way we get to know that about ourselves is to think about it. In American culture, we think with words. Mayan culture, I learned from Mayans, the patterns they wear in their clothing communicates information to other people.
Right.
I didn't know that, but that totally changes the way I think about the way Guatemalan people dress. Is like, why would they ever choose this shirt?
Because it's saying something.
Right. And so to me, children can't learn without communicating, without having a common language. And so I came to this work because they took the kitchen and the puppets and the cut and paste out of my classroom.
Yep.
And they told me to add rigor to my classroom. And I said, speaking English is rigor for my 5-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't talking about the Mayan children, who, of course, didn't speak English. I'm talking about the kids whose parents have had them in good early child care in Lake Worth, Florida for 3 years, VPK. The kids know their ABCs. And none of them know how to have a conversation.
So tell me more about that. And I know, Tamika, some of us have danced around this, and even I would say with our friend with Take on Trades, when we were talking about, it's all about communication and how businesses who are at a loss for employees who are now coming through educational systems, how to put it all together if you can't communicate with each other, and it's a new world. So, but
And
we also
you talk to college admissions officers with the number of college freshmen who need reading and writing remediation, who passed standardized tests and who were valedictorians of their classes at some charter schools or at some schools, because the children know how to pass the test. Because what Tamika talks about, and Tara Wallace, if you haven't met her, she's another friend of Tamika's and brilliant, who was talking about how you can't separate the pieces of the pie, right? I can take flour, butter, eggs, vanilla, salt, a little bit of coconut, maybe some whatever, and put them on the counter and say, this is coconut pie. And you're going to look at it and not even know what it's supposed to look like or taste or smell like or feel like, which is the way you're supposed to interact with pie. And you make that pie and the way I make that pie are going to be completely different. Watch the programs. We all watch the programs. They get a box. Everything's different. It's an interpretation. And until we expose our children to the interpretation of a common language, that's the important part. The common language. Once you have a common language, you can wait 10 years between conversations, pick it up where you left it off, and you're right there.
Well, and we've done this with friends or acquaintances, the people that if you have a connection, maybe you've met at a conference, you've explored something very deeply, you've connected, and then you go about your orbit and your different life, but then you come back and it's like it was yesterday. It was yesterday. So tell me, from your perspective and for the work that you're doing, how do you get to that kind of common language? And what is it? What kind of curriculum have you put into your recipe boxes? I love it. I love that analogy, the pie. We can have all the ingredients we want. What do we then do with them? That's extraordinary.
And I have to say, the science of reading and the science of learning and cognitive psychology and all of that, which is fascinating and get me on that rabbit hole on a different day.
Yeah.
And in the classroom, teachers need actionable skills.
And do they know how to do that? Do they know how to do that? Or
they don't. And they've gotten to the point where they're too frustrated to ask. Mm-hmm. And they know that what they're going to get isn't what they need.
Okay. Now, is this where you guys come in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes and yes and yes. Yes and yes.
Good. This is where you guys come in. So how are you helping? This is
where I wrote it.
Yeah.
Because I lived it. They took the kitchen away, and then somehow I'm supposed to teach Carmina how to read. She doesn't know how to speak. She doesn't know how to speak the language of her family of origin, because they're not a verbal society.
And that's a whole other piece of all of these recipes are different cultures coming in as well. Right.
And our education system was designed to teach white American citizens how to work in factories. And our schools do that still, but it's not what we need them to do. It's not why we pay our taxes. It's not what the rhetoric is. And so what I did was sit down and say to myself in a very frustrated, overwhelmed manner, I need to go have fun. This is awful. I hate my job. I hate my job.
And who needs to hate their job?
Like the sweetest boy in the world who I loved, whose sister was my student, whose mother was my friend, was in my class, and I hated my job. And people told me how good I was at it. I'm vivacious and dynamic and engaging. And I was, and I hated every minute of it because of how hard I had to work against the natural instincts of my students to get them to do things that were developmentally inappropriate. And I was being told to add rigor to a curriculum that everybody was saying kindergarten's the new second grade. Well, that's too rigorous. And that's a conversation that I was told I was difficult for having.
Right.
I am difficult.
This is so
thing over and over again that I did not create, that I am following the rules as prescribed and hating myself in the prospect. And I want to say that because those are the teachers who sat on my shoulders when I started to write the curriculum down. And I'm going to fast forward to that. So misery, which this was 2015. This was like way before COVID, right? Way. This was a year after they took the kitchen away and they gave me a curriculum that said, have the 5-year-olds read for 20 minutes silently. Have them read with partners for 20 minutes silently, like with a partner. Just let the 2 kids sit with a book for 20 minutes and expect them to be quiet and engage with the book. Now, I'm good, seriously. As a former colleague of mine used to say, I can teach a rock to read, but the question is, why would you want to? I don't want to teach rocks to read. I want to teach children how to enjoy their educational process. How to engage.
That right there, you're unpacking so much. And this is we always get to the heart of everything. This is big. It's very emotional. I see it's still emotional, which is your gift to all of humanity, but starting with the kids but to yourself. It was the gift to yourself. You gave yourself to recognize I'm brilliant, but I'm hating it because I'm not part of their box system.
Well, and I mean, it again, in a different episode, when we talk about the imposter syndrome, everybody's great, right?
Right.
And I hear myself in the classroom saying things that I know are not helping my students learn. Tamika says this beautifully. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong because I'm doing what they told me to do.
Yeah.
But what they're telling me to do feels wrong because it's not helping anybody get to what they want to do. So I went to improv class with Kat Kenny at Bob Carter's actor trip in at the time the class was behind Bob Carter's house in his studio in Lake Worth Beach. Now it's in a proper studio up on Dixie Highway. And Mason was in my class, my friend's son, my former student's brother. And I called his mother and I said, Kat's having an adult short form improv class. You want to take it with me? And she had been an actor before. And she said yes. And we went to Kat's class together. And literally after one class, I was happy. After 2 classes, I started playing the games with the students in my class. Because a 90-minute literacy block for 5-year-olds is too long. I mean,
an hour and a half for a 5-year-old to sit and be that quiet student at their desk. That's what you were describing? They wanted.
So I want to say the 90-minute literacy block I had for the 6 years I taught kindergarten in Palm Beach did not include the 45 minutes of specific writing instruction that came at a different time.
Right.
And now, because of the benchmark literacy curriculum the county district has purchased, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes of uninterrupted literacy instruction for 5-year-olds.
Oh, now that could make me cry. Because when's the last time an adult sat and did that?
Thank you for saying that.
But you have to consider, the proverbial in dog years. Maybe you and I could sit for 2.5 hours, but we're not 5.
And maybe we could learn from a computer program that we played for 45 minutes a week, but the 5-year-olds don't know how to learn from that. So
there's so much. Again, there's just so much here.
So much.
There's so much because to have the creativity, it goes back to what you were saying a few minutes ago, where you were recognizing, and Tamika touched on this, it's not as though you guys were trying to buck a system, but the system is not seeing the children to what they really need. In terms of engaging education, we want them to want to learn. We want all of our kids to enjoy learning and enjoy soaking in the beauty of this world, including literature and math and science. We want them to do that. But what you're seeing in a classroom is what the curriculums these days are those gaps. We talked about the gap. This is a gap of so much is getting lost, and the kids are getting lost. So I just wanted to touch base back on the root of where, okay, now you have improv, and now you're having fun. So it's on your email, like on the joy, fun, play. You're adding the joy, fun, and play.
Kind of backwards. Play, fun, joy.
Play, fun, joy.
Play it to feel it, you have to play it to have it to feel it, something like that. But play, fun, joy. We thought about it being joy, fun, play.
Yeah.
But the playing comes first.
Right.
The playing comes first. So there's a lot of science behind it. There's a great YouTube video. Serve and Return.
Okay.
It talks about the architecture of the brain, and that the serve and return that babies and parents do is the architecture for all learning. So depending upon what culture you grow up in, the serve and return of the adults in your village are going to teach you and prepare your brain for the learning in your community.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem that we have in America today is that the people creating the curriculum and the standard are still of a white European linear societal, cultural, academic learning.
Okay.
That culture had very dynamic childhoods for those rich white kids who had nannies who took them to theater and plays and museums and read books and went to and went on safari and did things, travel. And only then, when they sat down to read a reader, were they able to read. And then reading seemed to come naturally, and everybody said it's a light bulb that goes off on top of your head. And it is, and it's not, right? Because the minute you know how to break the code, you know how to break the code, but it's still a code.
Right.
I
remember that as a child, learning to read myself, the good old, Fun with Dick and Jane books, very, very phonetic and structured that way. But for me personally, it was like, and then I got it. I had to work at it, and then it went, oh, like riding a bicycle, and then it can flow.
So, I became a teacher at an interesting time during history. I'm older than Nika. By enough years that it matters. Because in 1983, the Secretary of Education, I think his name was Bell, for the United States of America, was fast going to lose his job because Reagan didn't want him after Carter. And he needed to create a reason to keep his job. And he wrote a report. And the report was called A Nation at Risk. And it talked about the achievement gap and the importance of closing the achievement gap, or the Russians are going to win, or like it was that, right? It was America is going to go down the toilet because Johnny can't read. Mm-hmm. And everybody went crazy. And there are books and studies on the effects of A Nation at Risk. Suffice it to say, the same gap that existed then exists today. Mm-hmm. And some people look at that and say the science of reading didn't teach us anything. But the science of reading taught us a lot, because between then and now, there was a bump. And the bump happened because there was still that common language. There wasn't the internet where the kids could go off in 150 million different directions and have their niche interests. But when we were all watching the same television programs, and we were all watching the same news programs, and we were all listening to the same music, even if it was 20 choices, there were only 20 choices and everybody knew what they were. Now that there are so many choices, there isn't a common language. Now, what do? I found out.
And what do?
We give the children a common language. Mm-hmm. Now, I taught dual language at North grade. I had a Peruvian partner. She is the love of my teaching life. And I learned an important lesson about language and about intelligence. They have absolutely nothing to do with each other. No matter what language you speak, you can be brilliant. And you can speak no language at all and be brilliant, because Stephen Hawking's needed technology. Yeah. And so I had to learn how to teach the non-English speaking children how to speak English, because in a dual language environment, I'm the ESOL teacher. Mm-hmm. And so I had to take ESOL classes for the first time in my life. And it turned out that a thing called total physical response works really well with children getting up out of their chairs and playing. So I did it. I got up out of our chairs, and in between things, I tucked the games in between things, right? We would play zip, zap, zop, and I'd say zip, and Heather would know to line up, and then Heather would say zop to somebody, and that kid would line up, and zip, zap, zop, and they'd line up. And then when we're standing in the hallway waiting for somebody else's class to get through the cafeteria lines, my kids are playing mirror, mirror with each other. And they're learning how to watch and pay attention to nuance.
These are some of the gifts from your improv class when you do these things.
These are the games. These are the games that I was learning from Kat in our warm-ups, that I was then bringing to my class, because I didn't have enough time to go to the garden across the street anymore, because people were saying, why is Harris taking the kid? I was Harris then. Why is Poskanzer taking the kids to the garden? Because it's kindergarten. Anyway.
Side tangent. But this is, yeah.
And so I wrote it down.
Right.
I started noticing that Kathleen Kenny, my improv coach, was really good with the kid and with the adult in our class who drove me insane. The kid in class that makes every teacher crazy. This man.
There's always one. There's always one. God bless them.
There are 5. I've had a kindergarten class with 5. It wasn't that year, but there was a year and I had 5 of them. And let me tell you, these games, you say, hey, Eddie, catch the ball. And he does. And it keeps him from punching somebody. We're all glad of it, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what I was doing. I was playing with them. In playing with them, we all learned as a class that Eddie was never hitting anybody. Eddie didn't know how to control his body. And so he's walking around the room big like this. And everybody says, Eddie's hitting me. And we learned through a game, walk, stop, jump, clap, that he's not hitting us. Eddie walks big. And until he figures out what to do with his hands, if you don't want him to touch you, you're going to have to give him a wide berth.
Because he's still figuring himself out.
He's still figuring himself out.
Yeah.
Now, one day, somebody said, Eddie hit me. And he's like, I'm not hitting anybody. And we say to Eddie, but when your arms are doing this, you're hitting us. And that's when his light bulb went off. That it was like, oh, they don't like me because I'm hitting them, but I'm not hitting them. But if I could keep my hands to myself, they might stop saying it and they might like me. And he didn't ever say those words to himself.
But you could see the light bulb.
Did.
Yeah.
Now, you also have to know, I had Eddie in kindergarten, and then I didn't have him in first grade. I had him again for second grade. And then I was his media specialist for 3 years. And I have to tell you, some kids take longer.
Mm-hmm.
But once they learn it, they know it forever. Because the truth is, once you learn something, you don't forget it unless you have a brain injury.
Right.
So the practice of making Eddie learn faster than he was capable of learning was causing him to break down and not learn even more.
Mm-hmm.
That is the heartbreak.
Right.
And he learned. I wrote down, people said to me, we don't know how you deal with him. Like, through his last 3 years, I'm a media specialist. Every single teacher he had would send him to me to get him to do the thing. I made a connection with him early on. But that child can be, he is seeking out those connections. I wish I knew how to reach his father to tell him to call Tamika, because I'm pretty sure he's dyslexic. I don't know how to reach him. Mm-hmm. But if you're listening to this, mm-hmm. and you know any of the children who were in my kindergarten and second grade class, you know who I'm talking about. Have his father call me. Because this is a kid who is brilliant, but who's beaten down by a system, because what makes him brilliant is his ability to bounce in between things. He gets it all. He's listening here, he's listening there, he's paying attention here, he's in everything. And he's socially connected in a way that once he got his hands to himself, every kid loves him because he's charming. And he's fun to play with.
Which is huge, which when this thing called school is over, that's ultimately what counts, right? Is how you are in the world and with each other. So again, we could rabbit hole all of this for so long. I want to get to now the grown-ups, because this gets into the curriculum, if I understand you, is that you're now working with the teachers, maybe administrators. You said you've spoken at Rotary clubs. Tell us about what it is that you're doing, putting all these dots together for the grown-ups to help.
So it's challenging. It's a difficult conversation with grown-ups.
Yeah.
It's a difficult conversation speaking with school leaders about the teachers they want to be protective of.
Well, do you have teachers reaching out to you? You said
I have teachers
on their shoulders.
So
are they looking for help?
Are like you.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, that's great. We don't need it. They need it. And so there's been a lot of connecting me to other people who need it, because the conversation is difficult with principals.
Mm-hmm.
It's difficult because the principal knows they're going to have to turn around and say to teachers, we're going to teach you how to have conversations. But I think what I've heard from teachers, literally about the teacher next door, and I was the teacher next door, is, oh my God, she can't talk to people like that. And if you're working in an environment where you've said that about someone else once,
mm-hmm.
if they heard you say the worst thing you've ever said once, and we have too much expectations on our teachers to have them come and say out loud, I don't know how to stop snapping at my students. I don't know how to leave the heartbreak of my husband losing his job and my father dying from seeping into the work I do. And that's what I want to say to teachers and administrators. The teachers are like I am. They're brilliant. They want to have these awesome and amazing conversations and learning environments in their classrooms. And then they go home and they look themselves in the mirror and they go, I can't believe I said that to Eddie. He doesn't deserve it.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't. And so it's to them that I speak. There's no judgment. There's sisterhood and brotherhood. We are in this together and we can fix it. The elasticity of the brain is phenomenal. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, the Hidden Brain podcast is like, people, I am not fun and playful with children the way my partners are. I am not. I am fun and playful with words and ideas and big thinking. And that's why I loved kindergarten, was because kindergartners think big. They just don't know how to communicate it yet.
Mm-hmm.
These conversations that help the people outside the building understand that you cannot go to the teachers and say to them, this is another thing that you're doing wrong that we're bringing to you. We have to say to them, we've heard you.
Mm-hmm.
You keep asking, how do I reach Eddie? This is how you reach him. We're going to give you these things. And it's not going to look anything like this podcast, Heather. I swear. Your podcast producer, Janine, has seen what the program is, and this isn't it. This is the conversation about it.
Right.
The actual doing of it is so fun.
Well, let me just back up for folks, is because Janine and her husband, they were part of, was it Tamika's experience, or maybe you had another one where it was part of a large group. It was engaging. You and I are having this one-on-one conversation, but to witness what you in action, and I've seen your photos online and things, you're out, it's big and it's bright and it's in front of a lot of people. So that's what your come from is. Like today we're just the two of us, but what you really do is Papa.
Well, and what we do for the teachers, and I have to say this for teachers who who are like my son's third grade teacher, who will never play these games.
Okay.
She supports this program 110%.
Mm-hmm.
And these are not fun games for her.
Right.
You give her a crossword puzzle, you give her a Sudoku, you give her Wordle. She is happy as a clam. She will sit there with a group of kids. They'll figure it out together. They're going to have a blast. But the games we play with the children, she doesn't enjoy for herself.
Right.
And that's the thing we give to the teachers. Don't play the games if you don't like them.
Because don't force it, because that's not going to work either.
What we're teaching the teachers in playing the games is how to use the fluency of playing to stop ourselves from saying the hateful thing and to go, I'm having a bad day, Eddie. I'm sorry. Stop tapping your foot because you know what it does to me. You know what it does. Like, then it's not that I'm giving him power. It's that I'm giving him the opportunity to be helpful. Right. And then we teach the children and we teach the teachers that those errors shouldn't follow them home. That those errors should stay in the classroom and use them as a way to show the children how to make a mistake and not hate themselves.
Right. Right. So they don't have to carry around these burdens or guilt or what my parents say or any of these other messages. It's just we're all human and human things happen. So if a teacher is having a human moment, I apologize, I'm having a bad day. And little Johnny doesn't have to be tapping his foot 10,000 times. That's the communication here, but then no one has to feel bad about it and take it home. And yeah.
The reason we made our curriculum the way we did.
Yeah.
Because of the science of the brain that says short spurts of learning with with periods of rest in between make learning last longer. It's like the lasting conversations over decades with friends from high school. Right. We have created a professional development that honors that. And we've created a curriculum that honors it. We only teach these things in 3-minute spurts or less, and we practice them in between times. They are only for fun. They are never for anything serious. And in an environment, like if you're in a K-8 that does this from kindergarten through 8th grade, because we taught it at North grade, which is a K-8 to every grade. If every grade in a school is authentically using it, by the time the kids are in 8th grade, of course you can play these games with content. Because then it's fun for them. Mm-hmm. Because they know how to play the game and have conversations and give a wrong answer and know it's okay, because the game is how they practice the information. But if you give a math game to a student and think that the game is going to give them self-confidence, it only gives self-confidence to the kids who get the right answers. The kids who are constantly wrong don't get a self-confidence unless we've already taught them that we learn from mistakes, that mistakes are opportunities, that we're failing fabulously, that isn't that hilarious, that when you make a mistake, that's when you ask for help.
To ask for help instead of feeling that you're in a downward spiral.
Teachers don't ask for help anymore because we stopped getting it.
Say that one more time.
Teachers stopped asking for the help they needed because they weren't getting it.
Now, are you finding now, because I keep hearing there are so many more of these conversations, there's more groups and folks like yourself as like, the outfield with the catcher's mitt, trying to be a support team for teachers and administrators, that the conversations are at hand. And then I'll go back to my friend Ray, who's an editor with Scholastic, who was talking about that there is actually more curriculum. There are more, yes, there are still textbooks for the kids, but really what's been happening as a bit of a shift are the support books for the teachers and administrators about feelings and about how to recognize this and that, the other, all the social things, the big things, the feeling things. And it is hopefully then shifting the nature of teaching itself, but mostly it goes into the heart of what you're talking about, to have the conversations.
But what we do is practice with the teachers. We take those books and we say, look, here's the books. It's there. But the teachers have this much time in their day.
Yeah.
When we're talking about professional development and they sit for a professional development for 6 hours and we're reading a PowerPoint and we're discussing it with each other, but nobody's literally teaching me how to sit at a table with 6 children while 15 other children are running around and tell me how I'm supposed to implement this curriculum with that happening.
Right.
And I'm not allowed to do certain things. And the thing we're allowed to do, which is to give the children the technology, is not doing what we need it to do. If it were, but the children need human interaction. That's why the group at the table is so important.
Mm-hmm.
So what we do literally is come in and do a group improv drop-in class with teachers. We play the games with them. That's what we do. We play with them. We teach.
That's great. So my question is, who is signing up for your programs? Where do you get to go in and do your work?
Well, okay. So right now I am working with different schools and school districts. So it's been word of mouth. And, I had a teacher that was working at my school and now she moved to another school and we're working with our school now. Aftercare programs, the city of Plantation had us train their counselors before the summer. So we do a truncated program for camp counselors so they can herd the cats. It's fantastic. And PACE Center for girls. But really, we are just out now. Like I am out here now saying, call me, literally. If your students, if this speaks to you, if this is a conversation we need to be having, we need to be having it. You can get, your teachers will get CEUs. It's aligned with every standard it needs to be aligned with, not just the social emotional learning, which is where I came in with all the CASEL standards for social emotional learning, but also the WIDA standards for children who are English language learners. WIDA stands for Wisconsin, Idaho, Delaware, I think Arkansas. I'm not sure the A state, forgive me. But those are the ESOL standards for literacy. It's aligned with the Common Core standards for literacy as well as Florida Best ELA standards.
So this program, for those who might think, this is all kind of go crunchy granola, touchy feely. No, you're here to hit benchmarks. Like there are definite benchmarks.
There are
students to thrive and succeed all around.
Well, so yes and no, I'm going to say that.
Okay.
I'm going to say I will never be a proponent of teachers and educators assessing social emotional growth of the students in their classroom.
Okay.
It's not for teachers to be doing the work of psychologists and and social workers.
Right. I think I was speaking to the academic benchmarks.
It is dangerous for everybody. So I came in on the social emotional learning to support that.
Right.
For it to be, these are skills kids are not getting in daycare. We wish they did, but they're not. And these are skills that kids in high school need, that they didn't get for whatever reason. And we need to empower an AP American history teacher with the ability to get his students to have a conversation with each other.
Well, that is a whole different rabbit hole. That's for sure.
So we come in and we teach the teachers how to use the play to elicit whatever language skill they need for their students, whether it be vocabulary, or grammar, or problem solving, where you need a common language. You're not solving a language with, that's the Tower of Babel. I didn't like.
Right. So Lisa, we could go on for such a long time. What I wanted to make sure is there's something right now for this particular conversation that you would like to share. You started to say to have people reach out to you because this is a nationwide and global wide show. So how can people find you? And is there some other one little important nugget on your heart that you would like to share?
Education is everything.
It's everything.
For our children.
Yeah.
And the conversations we have about education around our children is affecting how they feel about their own education and their own learning. And the people who stay in the classroom are doing the bravest, hardest work, and we need to give them all the help we can give them.
Yep.
I think this program helps them. And the people who have had it say it does. So what I'd like to say again, over and over again, is that we can go anywhere. We prefer to be in person at all times, and we have technology that enables us to engage and connect with your faculty wherever you live. And we want to have those conversations. The offer that I'll offer is that I'll come this way to a faculty meeting and talk to you for real, and talk to your staff the way they speak to each other when no one's listening.
That's very important. That's very important. So that's that authenticity, which goes right back to how you and I just clicked, because it's about being authentic. And, snots and all, we just have to say something sometimes with all due respect. But that's where it is. And here's the real trick. And it's not even a trick. The kids know this. So when you said how we speak about education, whether, if they hear their teachers say, oh my God, this stinks, or I want to quit, or their parents are like, blah, blah, blah. Of course, the kids absorb all that and take that in.
So I'm glad you brought it back to that, because your very first episode was about the conversations with your grandparents.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of the conversations I had with my grandparents and my grandmothers in their later years, which made me so joyful. But then I was thinking about the conversations around my grandparents' table when I was a child. And they were fascinating in terms of the content. There was so much rich content. My family read and they listened to things, and they went to the theater and they did, and it was fabulous. And I was overlooked and I was listening. I wasn't participating because I'm the baby. And I would sit under the table and just listen to what was going on. And I heard every word. But I saw every action. And I noticed that Grandma cooked dinner and brought it out. And she served Grandpa first, and it went around the table. And by the time she gave him the last plate and she sat down and the conversation's going and there's conversation and it's fantastic and it's about everything, he gets up and kisses her and kisses everyone at the table and goes to smoke his pipe. Now, he goes to smoke his pipe. He's not going to smoke at the table. Fine. But he got up every single time the minute she sat down.
And didn't have his dinner.
Oh, he was done.
Oh.
Serving.
Oh.
And I adored my grandfather. Like, he was the most important man and I loved him. And yet, until you and I had this conversation about grandparents and I went back to, I knew that the conversations of my childhood made me a teacher. And that conversation with you made me think maybe I became a teacher because the children are paying attention and the adults better pay. And then, oh, by the way, then we give them this.
The phone. Right. Then that's a whole different conversation.
Paying attention.
Right.
And we need to. So let's pay attention to the kids. They're fascinating and interesting and adorable.
They are. And they know everything. They know everything.
And I don't just mean that about the 5-year-olds. I like your 18-year-olds.
No, exactly. Lisa, this has been so fun. And again, we could just go on. It's been so fun. Tell us your website, your phone number, any kind of contact on how to reach you and have people follow up if they wish.
My website is improv, 2, improvesel.com. The email is Lisa P at improvtoimprovesel.com. It's I_LLC on Instagram, but I don't do a lot of posting there. It's Improv to Improve on LinkedIn and on Facebook. I'm trying to get better at it. And then I think it's really email me, call 561-283-4835. I will answer your phone call. I will definitely answer your text. If I don't answer your phone call, it's because of technology, not because of me. I like to talk.
Yes, you do, Lisa. Thank you. Thank you once again. This has been such a joy. And we will just keep on keeping on.
Yes.
We will. And thanks for listening, everybody. Please be sure to like, follow, review, and share this podcast. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation with the show, reach out via email at podcasts@lastingconversations.com and follow us on Facebook and now on Instagram at Lasting Conversations. This is Lasting Conversations. We get to the heart of everything.